The door opens, and Adalee is ushered into Commander Caspian's office, where he gestures for her to sit. As she does so, he leans back in his seat and says, "You've come to form an alliance, I understand. Who do you represent, and what can you offer Lodestar?" Adalee takes a deep breath and says, "I am a representative of a collective from the forest world Viridian. We have research to offer in exchange for said alliance. There's an ancient ascendancy beacon on our world, and my people have spent years studying it. We've made strides forward in a number of fields, strides we'd be willing to share." "Why us?" the commander asks. "Why Lodestar?" "Several weeks ago, the Ironhawks showed up, and we sent representatives to determine their intentions, but they imprisoned our people and started searching for the beacon. Now, it's well hidden, but we can't keep it from them forever." Adalee produces a small data cube from her pocket and sets it on the desk. "This is a sample of what we can offer. I can give you more if you agree to help my people." Caspian looks at the data cube and then to Adalee. "Is this technology what allowed your friend's ship to manipulate those spores?" "Lucius doesn't have any of our technology," she replies. The commander studies her for a moment. "Do you know what technology he does have? Is it something from the shipbuilder?" She frowns. "I don't know who the shipbuilder is. I'm here to discuss an alliance between Lodestar and my people. Lucius has nothing to do with that." "I see," the commander replies, picking up the data cube. "I will pass this information along to the clan leader. We'll speak again when she's had a chance to review it." Adalee stands and turns to leave, but then she hesitates and asks, "Why are you so interested in what happened with those spores?" Caspian looks at her. "If you know nothing about it, then it is not your concern. We'll get what we need out of Tarquin." Her eyes narrow. "What have you done?" "Only what is necessary for our security." Welcome back for Episode 7 of Errant Adventures. As always, I'm your Game Master and solo player, Steve Morrison. This week, Lucius Tarquin wakes up to a splitting headache and questions he doesn't want to answer, while Adalee makes a choice. Please enjoy Episode 7, Who Wants to Make an Alliance? Lucius Tarquin regains consciousness in a dark room. His head is throbbing, and I think he is kind of like blinking his eyes to see if he can clear out the haze that's in his head. And, he's like looking around a little bit, and there is a light that is shining on him. Everything else around is in darkness. And he hears a voice say, "Mr. Tarquin, please tell us about your ship. Was it gifted to you by the shipbuilder? Did you receive technology from the shipbuilder that would allow you to manipulate living things?" And these questions sort of proceed, and Lucius is blinking again, trying to clear the haze in his mind, and looks around, doesn't see where this voice is coming from, and he goes, Who are you people, and why are you doing this? This is no way to treat a guest." And the voice comes back and says, "Mr. Tarquin, you just have to answer the questions, and you will be returned to your ship. I assure you no harm will come to you here. We are simply interested in the abilities of your ship. Whatever technology you may have aboard, do not think that you can hide it from us. We need it, Mr. Tarquin. I hope you understand. We are in a fight for the future of our way of life. The founder clans are hunting us, all of us. even you perhaps. And if you do not ally yourself with Lodestar, you will unfortunately be lost with the rest. And Lucius looks around again. Look, I don't know what happened with those spores. I've told your commander this. It just happened, and we took advantage of it and got out of there. I don't know what you want from me. Mr. Tarquin, we just want the truth. That is all. If you provide us the truth, you will go free. If you continue to be obstinate, well, we shall have to continue our conversation until you are less obstinate. And this goes on for a while. And in order to cover what happens here, I think it makes sense for us to roll a little move I like to call face danger. So I think either it could go courage, which would be plus heart, or it could be endurance, which is plus iron. I don't know that I necessarily want to say that these Lodestar people are going to torture Lucius, so I don't know that endurance necessarily makes sense from that standpoint. They're having this conversation again and again and again and again and trying to trip him up in his story to basically break him open. And I think you could, make the argument that it's also expertise, focus, or observation, which would be wits. So I think I just talked myself out of courage and into wits, which is better for me because it's my strongest stat. So I think this is going to represent hours of them having this conversation, going over the details of what happened during the battle. And this is Lucius's ability to kind of keep his facts straight and try and steer things away from Adalee, which I think should be very important here. If I miss on this, he's going to give up Adalee's secret. So there's a lot of danger here. So we're going to go ahead and roll plus wits. I got +3. First roll of the game. Let's make it a good one. All right, so I got an 8 on the action die. I've got a 7 and a 9 on the challenge dice, so it's a weak hit. You succeed, but at a troublesome cost. Make a suffer move. So I think it makes sense that this would be a loss of spirit, which is unfortunate because we just got that spirit back. But I think, again, I'm not envisioning this as like they're torturing him for information. More of they might call it an aggressive debriefing, where they're asking him question after question after question, trying to get him to trip up. And he is able to keep his story straight, able to eventually convince them that, all right, maybe he doesn't know what happened, but it's very stressful. He is sort of exhausted after this. I think I'm going to try and endure this stress because I think this represents a kind of moment for Lucius to actually start to grow a little bit as a person who's no longer at home in a relatively safe environment, but as someone who is now out in the wider world of the Forge and is having to make his own way. So we suffered -1 spirit for this stress as a result of the weak hit on face danger. I'm choosing to resist the stress, so I can roll spirit or heart, whichever is higher. My spirit is 3, so that is higher than my heart. So I'm going to roll that. Okay, 5 on the action die. And I've got an 8 and a 9 on the challenge dice, which is a miss. So it's worse than I thought. Suffer an additional -1 spirit or lose 2 momentum. My momentum's sitting at 5. I'm going to go ahead and lose those 2 momentum to take it down to 3, just so I don't lose 2 spirit out of this. And this represents the time that he's being held by whoever these interrogators are. He's not able to sort of continue getting the ship ready to move on and do whatever is next on his mission list. So he spends this time after several hours. He's got a splitting headache. He, I think, is able to convince them enough that he doesn't actually know what happened with the spores, that they're like, well, we appreciate your candor, Mr. Tarquin. We will pass this along to the commander. And I think at that moment, there's a sound outside the door, and the door bursts open, and they're standing in the doorway, holding a Lodestar officer at gunpoint, is Adalee. And she looks around this dark room. Her eyes fixate on Lucius, and she says, "Are you okay?" And Lucius says, "Adalee, what are you doing here?" And she says, "I'm getting you out of here. Let my friend go now, or else." And the guard who's being kind of held at gunpoint is a little bit like, yeah, let him go. And the voice says, "This is very unusual. I'm afraid this is not how things work here, young lady." And she says, "They are how things work when I say they are." And I think Lucius sees a little like glint in her eyes, then hears the voice start to like he's under some sort of strain. And all of a sudden, the restraints that are holding Lucius are released. And he like stands up and sort of, "Oh, yeah, man, I don't feel so good." And is like stumbling a little bit. And Adalee says, "Lucius, come on, let's go." And they leave the interrogation room. After, they're kind of out of the interrogation room, she pushes the guard inside and seals the door back. And then the two of them take off running down the hallway. Now, I think Lucius is like looking over at her as they're running and is like, What are you doing? You came here to form an alliance with these people. They're not going to do an alliance with you now." And she said, I couldn't leave you in there, especially knowing that I asked you not to tell anyone. And because of that, you kept that promise. And that's what put you in there. And I just couldn't let you remain there. And Lucius takes a breath and says, I appreciate that, but I think they were going to let me go anyways. Now things are a little bit more complicated. And as they come around a corner, there are several more guards there. And Adalee like raises the laser pistol that she took from the guard and points it down the hallway. And Lucius grabs her arm and like lowers it and says, whoa, let's not do anything rash here. And he says this also to the other guards who are kind of pointing their weapons at them. And you can hear footsteps of others coming up behind. Whoa, let's just calm down and let's not do anything rash. I'm sure we can come to an understanding. We need to speak with clan leader Aerith now. If she ever wants to be assisted by a herald again, she had better meet with me now. I think there's a moment while there's some communication that goes back and forth. And then the leader of the Lodestar guards nods and says, "Very well, follow me." And they're essentially taken into custody. Adalee surrenders the pistol, and they are led off back towards that ready room where they first met Nishana Aerith. I think this is probably another good opportunity to test the relationship, because that move says when your relationship with a connection is tested through conflict, betrayal, or circumstance, roll plus heart. We are testing this because of circumstance. Not only did Lucius not give her up, but she also put her own mission in jeopardy to come rescue him. So I think there's definitely some developing of this relationship. So let's see. So we're going to roll plus heart, which is +2. I got a 7 on the action die. I've got a 5 and a 3 on the challenge dice for a strong hit, which is awesome. I'm really, really happy with that. I'm really excited with how their sort of relationship is continuing to evolve. With a strong hit, because we don't have a bond with Adalee yet, we're going to develop the relationship, and that is marking progress per the rank of the connection. Now, I believe that she was a dangerous rank connection, so we're going to mark 2 progress. So we're now at 4 progress out of 10 on that relationship. So it's cool because at a certain point, I can try to resolve that progress and forge a bond with Adalee which will, when you forge a bond with someone, not only do you mark some ticks on your bond legacy track, but you also get more bonuses with that person when you're doing various moves. And I think if things continue along that path, eventually I might actually be able to turn her into a companion asset, which is an actual like character that I can keep around with me, who will have some stats of their own. So I think they are led into the ready room where clan leader Aerith is waiting, as is Commander Caspian, and they are ushered in there and kind of are standing, and I think the clan leader Aerith is sitting at her desk, and the commander is sort of flanking her. And as they enter, she looks up and says, "Well, this is very interesting. Sounds like you caused a bit of a ruckus around my brig," as she says to Adalee. "I cannot understand why someone coming to form an alliance with us would behave in such a way. Perhaps you can shed some light on this for me?" Adalee says, "Your commander kidnapped my friend, drugged him, and has been holding him against his will. That's not exactly behavior befitting someone I would like to form an alliance with." And clan leader Aerith turns her head to her commander and says, "Commander Caspian, is this true? Did you do this thing?" And he says, "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Tarquin has technology that we could use in the defense of our fleet." Clan leader Aerith says, "Did you ask him for this technology?" And the commander says, "I did ask him about it, and he denied having any knowledge. And you decided it would be a good idea to take him into custody and question him in order to determine the veracity of that?" "Yes, ma'am." "I see. And you, Mr. Tarquin, what do you have to say for yourself? Do you in fact have technology that could be of use to Lodestar?" Lucius looks at her, and I think this is part of that growth that I was kind of talking about. He has a little bit more steel in his spine than he has in the past. And he looks at her and he says, "I was sent here with a message from my aunt, Aurelia Tarquin. I believe she is someone that you need, given the state of your ships. Not only that, but I am a bona fide herald with all of the necessary documents and classifications, and you imprisoned me and questioned me about things that I told you I didn't know anything about. Now, I don't know exactly how this works, but I'm pretty sure if I tell the heralds about this, they won't send any more messengers out this way, and you'll have to do that dirty work yourself. Probably don't want that, do you?" And I think Adalee beside him is like, "Careful, you're getting a little snotty." And he takes a breath and says, "You're right, I'm sorry. This has been a very trying evening. Let me put it to you this way, clan leader Aerith. If I had information that could help your cause, I would sell it to you. But I don't, and I'm a little put out that you would treat one of your guests this way. I guess you really have gone a far way from the founder clans. Now, do you have a message for me to return to my aunt, or shall I go and let that be your answer?" Nishana Aerith sits for a moment, pondering, and says, "Caspian, you may go." And the commander hesitates for a moment and then says, "Yes, ma'am," and leaves. And Nishana says, "I apologize for my commander's actions. He is somewhat fervent in his desire to protect Lodestar, and that I appreciate, but you are correct. Such action should not have been taken against you. I am impressed, although perhaps somewhat concerned, that you, young lady, were able to bypass my security and reach your friend Lucius Tarquin, but I am glad to know that you would be so eager to protect a friend. Perhaps there is a way that we can form an alliance. And yes, Mr. Tarquin, I do have a message for your aunt. This sector is in grave danger. The Ironhawks have begun expanding in this direction. I know that you have had several interactions with them on your journey here. They are looking for something. Perhaps it is this beacon that you spoke of, Adalee. Perhaps it is something else. But I believe they are looking for some piece of ascendancy technology that is ancient and powerful, and which would give them predominance amongst the other founder clans. I know how they think. I know how they act. They will do whatever it takes to achieve and acquire that piece of technology. It cannot be allowed. And Lodestar is determined to protect this sector and other sectors from these terrible advances by the Ironhawks. And I think in that moment, Lucius is looking at her as she says all this, and he has this, again, moment of recognition as he says, I know you. It's very hard to read her emotions, but I think when he says that, she smiles ever so slightly. And Lucius says, you were a captain with the Ironhawks. I remember you. And Adalee, is looking at him somewhat confused. And she says, I wondered if you might. It was a long time ago, 10, 11, 12 years, but yes, we did meet before. You were friends with my aunt back then. And Nishana smiles ever so slightly and says, friends, yes, that is a word you could use. And Lucius says, and you were exiled. There was something, my parents wouldn't let me learn all that much about it, but there was something about you and my aunt. You did something. And Nishana smiles a little bit again and says, yes, it was the beginning of Lodestar, even back then. I didn't know what it was called yet, but that was when it started. Aurelia and I had different opinions on how the founder clans should use the technology at hand. We were not encouraged to pursue our ambitions. In fact, we were cast out. But that is a story for another time. Suffice to say, I am not your enemy, Lucius Tarquin. I apologize again for the behavior of my commander. We are, of course, interested in anything that will allow us to protect our people, but it should not come at a personal cost to our friends. And I hope indeed you are a friend, considering your aunt sent you. Now, as for Adalee and your people, I cannot send the fleet all the way to Viridian, but perhaps we could have a mutually agreeable circumstance. Tell me about this beacon. And Adalee says, well, I haven't spent much time with it, but it's hugely powerful, and there's a considerable amount of data that we're still unraveling, but there's much that we can learn from it. And Clan Leader Aerith says, tell me, is it small enough that it could be transported on a ship? And Adalee says, yes, I believe so, though my people will not let it go out of their sight. I see. This is well then. Here is the task. Lucius, I have a message for you to return to your aunt. She has a ship for me. It's a new ship that she has just finished building, and I want you and Adalee and some of my best soldiers to take that ship and go rescue this beacon from Viridian. Rescue your people as well, and return them to Lodestar. Adalee says, oh, thank you. I am glad that we were able to come to an agreement, and I hope none of your men were too injured. To which Clan Leader Aerith says, no, they were not, though our chief interrogator did experience some interesting symptoms during your rescue attempt. And she gives Adalee a very ascertaining look. And then she says, here, I have drawn up the communication for Aurelia, and holds out a data cube to Lucius and says, we do not wish to overturn all things of our culture, And for that purpose, and she like reaches up and touches an iron badge that's on her uniform. And she says, I swear that I will do all in my power to protect the people of Viridian from the Ironhawks. And I will do whatever it takes to see that the Ironhawks do not reign over this sector. And Lucius nods, takes the data cube off the desk, and says, well, likewise, clan leader Aerith, I swear to return this data cube to my aunt, and in so doing, also then take Adalee on to her home. Very well. It is agreed. I will send a squad of my best troops to your ship. They will come with you. Don't worry, Commander Caspian will not be amongst them. And Lucius smiles a little bit and says, I would appreciate that. I thought you might. Very well, you are dismissed. When you have returned with the beacon, we shall speak more. At which point, Lucius and Adalee turn and leave. Now, in there, Lucius swore an iron vow. So his vow that he is swearing has two parts to it. So I'm actually going to swear, I think, one vow now to Nishana Aerith, which is to take the message back to Aunt Aurelia. I think at that point, there will be another vow that will be to proceed on and continue doing the task with the new ship. So I'm going to say that returning the message to Aurelia Tarquin is probably, in this case, just going to be a dangerous vow. It's not going to be formidable. So we're going to go ahead and swear this iron vow. We're going to roll plus heart. Nishana Aerith is not a connection yet, but she might be in the future. So we're going to roll plus heart plus 2. All right, well, this is what happens when I let my dice cool off for a while. So I've got a 4 on the action die. I've got a 6 and an 8 on the challenge dice. For a miss, you face a significant obstacle before you can begin your quest. Envision what stands in your way, ask the Oracle if unsure, and do what you must to overcome this obstacle. I actually think this is super straightforward. The obstacle is because of all the different jumps that we had to make to reach Lodestar and then to kind of follow after them and lose, quote unquote, the Ironhawks. I don't think that Lucius has a clear route back. So what I was planning to do before I rolled that miss on the Swear an Iron Vow was to just set a course to make one jump back from Lodestar back to Rampart. So we could just kind of skip right over that. But since we have this obstacle in our way, I think it's going to require a bit of a journey to get back. That being said, I don't think it's going to be as difficult of a journey as it was to get to Lodestar, because I think Lucius does have a few data points on the way that he can use to sort of triangulate their course. While Lucius and Adalee are waiting for the forces from Lodestar to join them on the ship, we're going to try and resupply again, because I think at this point, if we go out on this journey with a supply of 1, things might get pretty hairy. So now knowing that the obstacle of Commander Caspian is sort of out of the way, I think we can go ahead and try and resupply again. Of course, if I roll a miss on this, then either there's just not going to be stuff, or there is, Caspian has this grudge that he's holding. I am going to, again, go ahead and barter or make an appeal, so we're rolling plus heart again, plus 2. We got a 4 on the action die, we got a 5 and a 9 on the challenge dice. For a miss, we encounter an unexpected complication. Pay the price. Well, we might as well roll on the pay the price Oracle table just to see what it says. 57. A friend, companion, or ally is in harm's way. Okay, so I think Lucius and Adalee return to the ship. They put in a few more requisitions, but things are actually pretty tight here at Lodestar, and so they don't have a whole bunch of supplies that they can share. So there are, a few that they are able to pass along, but they are basically unable to. So Lucius and Adalee go, they rest, and their shipmates, the soldiers from Lodestar, show up. And I think we should define a person to kind of be their leader. So I'm going to roll on some names. Mila. So we'll say Lieutenant Mila comes on board, and they offer a salute and say, "We are here to follow your orders and perform the task that has been set out for us by the clan leader." Lucius and Adalee welcome them aboard the Hadrian's Folly. The ship fires up its engines. Lucius flies the Hadrian's Folly out of the docking bay and prepares to make the jump into E-Drive. We now see Rampart with this whirlwind storm that seems to have been continuing on for days and days and days. Kind of died down a little bit, but then came back. And we see the shipbuilder's warehouse and the shield that is around it. I think we see another ship that is descending down through the atmosphere. And as it does so, it kind of gets close in towards where the shielded area is. And there's like blasts from a shipboard cannon come down and start bombarding the shield. And as it does so, the camera like pans up and we see the emblem of the Ironhawk on this ship as it is bombarding Aurelia Tarquin's base. So that's the complication. Friend, ally, companion in danger. So when we get back there, who knows what that will mean? So the Hadrian's Folly is about to make a new journey back to Rampart. So we are going to undertake an expedition. When you trailblaze a route through perilous space, journey over unexplored terrain, or survey a mysterious site, give the expedition a name and rank. We've done that. I think we are going to try to stay vigilant. So we're going to roll plus wits, which is +3, and see if we can't get back to Rampart without coming into contact with any Ironhawk ships that are out here. All right, so after a spate of bad rolls, I've got a 7 on the action die. I've got a 3 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. So reach a waypoint, envision it, and mark progress per the rank of your expedition. So it's a dangerous expedition, so I get to mark 2 boxes of progress. Perfect. And let's see what this waypoint is. So I'm going to go ahead and roll again on one of my favorite tables, the space sighting, and we'll see what we see. So again, we're still in the Outlands. So I rolled a 50, which is a planet. So what kind of planet do we come across? 81, a rocky world. Okay. Let's see what our observed from space looks like. So it looks like there was a massive impact crater. And like there are several of these massive impact craters spanning across the surface of this rocky world. And Lucius gives it a quick scan to see if there are any settlements. 85. So yes, there's an orbital settlement. And it looks like there are hundreds of life forms on this orbital station. And I think Lucius is interested in trying to see if he can he's still looking to resupply. So I think the fact that there is this orbital station and there's signs of civilization out here, that he is going to try and see if he can get close and determine if they have supplies for trade or barter or whatever. So we're going to explore this waypoint. So when you divert from an expedition to scout a notable location, roll plus wits. So I've got a 7 on the action die. I've got a 5 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So uncover something interesting, but it is bound up in a complication or reveals an ominous new aspect of this place. Envision what you encounter, ask the oracle if unsure, and take +1 momentum. And let's roll on our action and theme to see what triggers here. So we got 56, which is initiate, and 7, which is belief. Initiate belief. So they come in close to the station, and all of a sudden they start getting bombarded with all sorts of Clan Idebren propaganda. Like, the Ironhawks are here to defend you. Don't fear the Ironhawks. Praise them. they are powerful and they are here to protect us. And like all this sort of propaganda that is going out. And Lucius looks at Adalee and is like, well, we can try to get on board the station and see if we can do a quick trade. But if they find out that we have any connection with Lodestar, there's going to be trouble. And Adalee says, yeah, but it might be worth it. So Lucius is going to calm them and say, hello, I'm out here traveling. I'm a herald. And I am looking to resupply my ship. Is it possible for me to gather some supplies? And I think making a compel here makes sense. So this is just charming, very, very sort of straightforward with heart. So +2. All right, so I got an 8 on the action die. I've got a 2 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. As above, but their agreement comes with a condition or a complication. Envision their counteroffer. Ask the Oracle if unsure. So I think the counteroffer is, yes, you can land and resupply, but your ship will have to undergo a search to make sure it is not carrying any contraband that would be contrary to the Ironhawk's purposes in this sector. At which point, Lucius looks at Adalee and goes, well, I guess not. And I think the station probably starts to scramble some fighters when Lucius is like, no, that's all right. I appreciate your time, but we'll just be moseying on. And they start to send some ships out, but Lucius is able to engage the E-Drive and continue on the next leg of the journey before they're able to catch up. So again, I think staying vigilant, rolling plus wits, +3 here. All right, so I got another strong hit with a 9 on the action die and a 5 and a 3 on the challenge dice. So again, we get to mark progress, which is going to be another 2 boxes. And let's envision our waypoint here. So 69 is a deep space settlement. So let's see what this settlement is like. 67 on the population is going to be thousands. Okay. So there's this space station in deep space. Let's see what the initial contact's like. 7. Welcoming. Hey, perfect. So we come out and I think they are like, hello, traveler. Welcome to, we should pick a name. 23. Welcome to Eris, where all are welcome. And everyone's money is happily accepted. And Lucius says, all right, well, maybe we have better luck here. And they start to make their way in that direction as well. So I'm going to, again, try to explore this waypoint, rolling plus wits, and hoping against hope that we can definitely get some supply here. All right, so I've got a 6 on the action die. I got a 4 and a 9 on the challenge dice for another weak hit. So we uncover something interesting, but is bound up in a complication. So I get another momentum, bumps me up to 5. And I think the complication, and we're starting to see the situation in the sector is starting to deteriorate a little bit as we now see that there is an Ironhawk ship that has landed here. And I think this is where, as the last place was an Ironhawk sort of propaganda center, this has no connection to the Ironhawks, but there are Ironhawks here. So we're going to try and resupply here, but doing so is, of course, going to have a little bit of risk to it, because if they do find us, who knows what will happen. So we're going to resupply. We're going to attempt to barter with plus heart, +2, see if we can't do well. All right, so I've got a 3 on the action die. I've got a 6 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a miss. I think the setup is very clear. The Ironhawks detect their ship. There's been communication that has gone out that the Hadrian's Folly is somehow connected to Lodestar, and they are now hunting us. So the complication is we are not able to resupply at all, and we essentially get chased out again out of this system. And I don't think we need to face danger to actually escape. I think the complication of not resupplying is enough of a complication. So Lucius and Adalee are like sitting in the cockpit as they're flying away and charging up the E-drive again. And Adalee says, "We've had a bit of bad luck on this journey so far." Lucius says, "I think you're right. I think it's getting a little bit harder and harder out here to stay ahead of the Ironhawks." "Yes, indeed. I hope that means that my people are all right." Lucius says, I suppose it's okay either way, right?" And Adalee gives him a look, and he says, "Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like they treated you all that well based on what you said. So, if something bad were to happen to them," and she has this look on her face, and she says, "They're still my family, and that does mean something." And Lucius nods and says, "I get that." Well, E-drive's charged. Let's find out what happens next. And they're going to punch it and head off for the next waypoint. Sticking with the rolling plus wits, they're continuing to stay vigilant, although it hasn't really helped them all that much, kind of getting deeper and deeper into it. So here we go. All right, so we got a 9 on the action die. I have a 5 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a weak hit on this undertaken expedition. So reach a waypoint and mark progress, but you must also choose one. So we can suffer cost en route or face a complication at the waypoint, envision what you encounter, ask the Oracle if unsure. So I'm going to go ahead and mark 2 more boxes of progress, which takes us up to 6, which is nice. And we are going to face a complication at the waypoint. So let us, again, I think, take a roll on the action and theme to see what this complication is. 67, oppose, and the theme, 47, humanity. Oppose humanity. Okay, so they jump out of E-drive, and almost immediately, Lucius knows there's something wrong. As the ship systems begin to flicker and power is coming on and going out, and Lucius is flipping all the like toggles and switches that are in the cockpit, trying to get the ship to restore power. And as Lucius is trying to contend with this, Adalee says, "Oh, Lucius, look at that." And she points out the view screen. Lucius looks up and sees this massive ascendancy structure that is floating in the middle of deep space, and it is just thrumming, whoom, whoom, whoom. And with each thrum of power from this ascendancy artifact, the power is flickering out. And then after maybe like 5 seconds, this burst of energy emits from the artifact, and the power fails. In the darkness, Lucius and Adalee can only hear the sound of each other's labored breathing. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please tell your friends, family, pets, or really anybody you want about it. And head over to Apple Podcasts to leave a review so more people can find the show. If you want to chat with me, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at ErrantSoloPod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.